Please. I've changed. I swear I've changed.
He was on his knees in her driveway, rain soaking through his clothes, thinner than she remembered, older, broken. His dark hair was longer now, streaked with gray at the temples. His once confident face was hollowed out, haunted. "Please," Tyler Morrison said, his voice cracking. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except 5 minutes. 5 minutes to apologize. I know I don't deserve it. I know what I did was unforgivable." He looked up at her, rain running down his face like tears. "But I've changed, Melissa. I swear to God I've changed." 5 years ago, she would have believed him. 5 years ago, she had believed him. But 5 years ago, she was a different woman. Before the recording, before the reception speech that became legendary in Houston society, before she learned exactly what the man she loved was capable of, now Tyler Morrison was back, kneeling in her driveway, begging for forgiveness, claiming to have found God. He found himself, found his conscience. Every instinct Melissa had screamed that it was another con. But what if she was wrong? What if 5 years of suffering had actually changed him? What if the woman who exposed him had become so suspicious, so hardened, that she couldn't recognize genuine transformation? What if Tyler Morrison had actually become a better man? She almost believed him. Almost. What happened next tested everything Melissa had learned about trust, about forgiveness, and about the men who will say anything to get what they want. But before I tell you how Tyler's redemption ended, let me tell you about the 5 years that brought him to his knees. And drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from. Houston? Atlanta? Chicago? Lagos? London? Let me know. I want to see how far Melissa's story travels. Now back to Tyler Morrison and the 5 years that broke him. So Tyler Morrison hit rock bottom approximately 6 weeks after the wedding that destroyed him. The men who worked for Victor Salazar found him at 2 a.m. in the parking lot of the budget motel he'd been living in since his car was repossessed. There were 3 of them: large, professional, patient. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. Their fists communicated Victor's message clearly: $187,000 plus interest plus penalties for the inconvenience of having to track him down. Tyler spent 4 days in the hospital. Broken ribs, fractured jaw, a ruptured spleen that required emergency surgery. He had no insurance. The bills added another $94,000 to his debt. When he got out, he ran. He left Houston in the middle of the night, taking a Greyhound bus to El Paso with $47 in his pocket. From there, he crossed into New Mexico, then Arizona, then Nevada. He worked cash jobs, dishwashing, day labor, construction cleanup. Whatever kept him moving, kept him invisible, kept him away from Victor Salazar's reach. For 2 years, Tyler Morrison lived as a ghost. Different names, different cities, sleeping in shelters when he could, on the street when he couldn't. The man who had once worn $3,000 suits and dreamed of marrying into millions now counted himself lucky to afford a hot meal. The bottom came in a homeless camp under a bridge in Reno. He was sick. Some kind of infection from a cut that had gone untreated. Fever of 104, delirious. But certain he was going to die alone under that bridge, and certain that he deserved to. A woman from a local outreach ministry found him. Her name was Sister Patricia. She was 67 years old, 4 feet 11 inches tall, and she had been working with homeless populations for 40 years. She got him to a clinic, sat with him while he recovered, listened to his story without judgment. "You did terrible things," she said simply when he finished. "You hurt people who trusted you. You lied and manipulated and schemed." Tyler waited for the condemnation. "But you're still alive," Sister Patricia continued, "which means you still have a chance to become someone different. The question is whether you want that chance badly enough to do the work." Tyler Morrison, for the first time in his life, did the work. He spent the next 2 years at a recovery center in Reno, not for drugs or alcohol, for something harder to treat, for the patterns of manipulation and exploitation that had defined his entire adult life. He worked with therapists who specialized in personality disorders. He attended group sessions with other men who had hurt people through deception. He read books, wrote journals, confronted the emptiness inside himself that he had always tried to fill with money and status and the thrill of the con. He got a job at a warehouse. Minimum wage, honest work. He saved money slowly, painfully, and sending whatever he could to Victor Salazar through an intermediary, chipping away at a debt he might never fully repay. He wrote letters to his mother. At first, she didn't respond. Then, after 18 months, she wrote back. A single line. I'm willing to listen. He flew to Katy on a discount airline, wearing clothes from Goodwill, and sat in his mother's living room for 6 hours telling her everything. Not excuses, not justifications. Just the truth about who he had been and who he was trying to become. Margaret Morrison cried. Then she hugged her son for the first time in 3 years. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said, but I'm willing to try. It was more than Tyler deserved. He knew that. He accepted it. And then, after 5 years of running and suffering and slowly, painfully rebuilding himself from nothing, Tyler Morrison decided he had one more thing to do. He had to apologize to Melissa. Not to ask for anything, not to manipulate, not to scheme, just to acknowledge the harm he had caused and to tell her that he understood, finally, what he had done. He flew back to Houston on a Wednesday morning. He took an Uber to the address he'd found online, a beautiful home in River Oaks, not far from her parents' estate. He stood at the end of the driveway for 20 minutes, trying to find the courage to approach. Then the sky opened up and rain began to pour. Ian and Tyler Morrison walked up that driveway, knelt on the wet pavement, and waited for the woman he had tried to destroy to decide his fate. Melissa stood inside her home, looking through the window at the man kneeling in her driveway. Her daughter, Emma, 3 years old, with her father's kind eyes and her mother's honey-blonde hair, tugged at her leg. Mommy, who's that man? No one, sweetie. Go find Daddy. Emma toddled off toward the living room, where David was working on his laptop. Yet Melissa watched her go, her heart clenching at the sight of her daughter. This was what she had built. This life, this family, this peace. And now Tyler Morrison was kneeling in her driveway, threatening to disturb all of it. She should call the police. She should have him removed. She should slam the door and never think about him again. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he looked, not the confident predator she remembered, but something broken, something hollow. Maybe it was curiosity. What could possibly bring him back here after 5 years? Or maybe, and this was the thought that troubled her most, maybe it was doubt, the small voice in her head asking, what if he really has changed? David appeared beside her, Emma in his arms. Who's that? Tyler. David's expression shifted. He knew the whole story. He'd held her through nightmares about that wedding day. He'd helped her rebuild her ability to trust. Do you want me to call the police? Melissa watched Tyler through the rain-streaked glass. He hadn't moved, hadn't tried to approach the door, just knelt there, waiting. No, she said slowly. Not yet. Mel, I need to hear what he has to say. That's a terrible idea. Probably. She turned to her husband. But if I don't, I'll always wonder. And I'm tired of wondering about Tyler Morrison. David studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll be right inside. Emma and I won't leave. I know. She opened the front door and stepped onto the covered porch, out of the rain but close enough to see Tyler clearly. Get up, she said. Her voice was flat, controlled. You look pathetic. Tyler rose slowly, his clothes soaked, his body shivering. He didn't approach the porch, stayed at the edge of the driveway, keeping distance between them. "Thank you for not calling the police. I haven't decided not to yet. You have 5 minutes. I know I don't deserve 5 seconds. You're right, you don't. Talk." Tyler took a breath. The words he'd rehearsed for months seemed to evaporate in the rain. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," he said finally. "I know I'll never get that, and I don't deserve it. I'm not here to explain or justify or make excuses. There are no excuses for what I did." He met her eyes. "I'm here to tell you that you were right. About everything. I was a con artist, a fraud, a predator who targeted you for your family's money. And when you exposed me, I told myself you were the villain, that you had humiliated me unfairly, that I was the victim." He shook his head. "It took me 5 years to understand how delusional that was. 5 years of running, hiding, suffering. 5 years of therapy and reflection and confronting every lie I ever told myself." His voice cracked. "You didn't ruin my life, Melissa. I ruined my life. You just showed everyone who I really was. And that was the most honest thing anyone had ever done for me." Melissa listened without expression. She had learned long ago how to keep her face neutral when she didn't trust what she was hearing. "What do you want, Tyler?" "Nothing. I swear to you. I don't want money. I don't want reconciliation. I don't want anything except to say these words and then disappear from your life forever." He took another breath. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For lying to you. For using you. For making you doubt your own judgment. For everything you went through because of me." Tears were mixing with rain on his face now. "You deserve so much better than what I gave you. And I truly hope, that you found it." He glanced toward the house, where David was visible through the window, holding Emma. "It looks like you did." Melissa said nothing. Tyler nodded slowly, accepting her silence. "I'll go now. You won't see me again. I just needed you to know that somewhere in the world, the man who hurt you finally understands what he did. And he's sorry." He turned and began walking toward the street. "Tyler." He stopped, turned back. Melissa studied him for a long moment, looking for the angle, looking for the con. "Where are you staying?" "A motel on the freeway. The Lone Star Inn." "How long are you in Houston?" "I don't know. A few days, maybe. I wanted to see my mother again before I leave." "And then what?" "Back to Reno. I have a job there. Nothing fancy. Warehouse work. But it's honest." Honest. The word hung in the air between them. "I don't believe you," Melissa said finally. Tyler nodded. "I know. I wouldn't believe me either. But I'm going to check. I'm going to have people look into everything you just told me. The recovery center. The job. All of it. I'd expect nothing less. And if I find out you're lying, if this is another scheme, it's not. If it is," Melissa continued, her voice hardening, "I won't just expose you this time. I will destroy you so completely that you'll wish you'd stayed under that bridge in Reno." Tyler met her eyes. For the first time, something like respect flickered across his face. "You've changed, too." "Yes, I have. Now get off my property." He nodded and walked away into the rain. Melissa watched him go, her arms crossed, her mind racing. Then she went inside and called her father. "Now, if you're feeling the tension building, hit that like button. Let me know you're with Melissa as she decides whether to trust the man who almost destroyed her. Because what happens next, it's going to test everything she's learned." Richard Chambers was in his study when his daughter called. "He's back? In Houston?" "He was just here, at my house, on his knees in the driveway. I'll have him removed from the city." "Daddy, you can't actually do that." Watch me. Melissa almost smiled. I need you to do something else. I need a full workup. Everything he's been doing for the past 5 years. The recovery center he mentioned. His job in Reno. All of it. You're not actually considering... I'm not considering anything. I'm gathering information. There's a difference. Richard was silent for a moment. This is a mistake, Melissa. Men like Tyler don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are. Maybe, but I need to know for sure. Why? He's out of your life. You won. Let it go. Melissa looked out the window at the rain still falling. Because if he's lying, I want to catch him. And if he's not... She paused. If he's not lying, then I need to understand what that means. For me, for everything I've believed for the past 5 years. Richard sighed. I'll have the report by morning. Thank you. Daddy. Melissa? Yes? Be careful, please. I always am. Now. The report arrived at 7 a.m. the next morning. It was thorough. Richard's investigators had worked through the night, pulling records, making calls, verifying every claim Tyler had made. The Reno Recovery Center was real. Tyler had been a resident for 22 months, completing an intensive program for manipulative personality patterns. His counselors spoke highly of his progress. The warehouse job was real. That he'd been employed there for 18 months, promoted twice, never missed a shift. His debt to Victor Salazar was nearly paid off. Regular monthly payments for 4 years, documented and verified. His relationship with his mother had been rebuilt. Margaret Morrison had confirmed to the investigator that Tyler visited regularly, that they attended church together, that she believed her son had genuinely changed. Everything checked out. Melissa read the report 3 times, looking for the crack, the inconsistency, the tell. She couldn't find one. It's real, she said to David that night, after Emma was asleep. All of it. He actually did the work. David was quiet for a moment. Does that change how you feel? I don't know. She set the report down. Part of me is relieved. If he's really changed, then he's not a threat anymore. He's just a sad man trying to make amends. And the other part? The other part doesn't trust any of it. The other part says this is exactly what a good con artist would set up. Years of groundwork for the long game. What would the long game even be at this point? I don't know. That's what worries me. David took her hand. You know what I do for a living, he said gently. I work with people who have done terrible things, people who have hurt others, lied, stolen, manipulated, and some of them, not all, but some, actually change. I know. I'm not saying you should trust Tyler. I'm not saying you should forgive him or let him into your life. But I am saying that transformation is possible. I've seen it happen. Melissa looked at her husband, the man who believed in second chances, the man who had rebuilt her faith in humanity after Tyler destroyed it. You think he's genuine? I think it's possible. That's all I'm saying. And if you're wrong, then we deal with it together, like we deal with everything. She leaned against him, and exhausted by the weight of decisions she didn't want to make. He wants to apologize to you too, she said quietly. He mentioned it, said he needed to make amends to everyone he hurt. Are you going to let him? I don't know. Should I? David was silent for a long moment. That's not my decision to make. But if it helps... I'm not afraid of him, Mel. He can't hurt us. We're solid. We are. She squeezed his hand. But I'm still going to be careful. I'd expect nothing less. 2 days later, Melissa made a decision that would test everything. She called Tyler at the motel, told him she had verified his story, told him that David was willing to meet him, once, briefly, in a public place. This isn't forgiveness, she said clearly. This is closure. For both of us. I understand. If you're playing a game, Tyler, if this is some kind of scheme, it's not. I promise you. Your promises mean nothing to me. I know. I'm going to prove it anyway. They met at a coffee shop in Montrose. Neutral territory, Melissa and David on one side of the table, Tyler on the other, looking nervous and older and nothing like the confident predator she remembered. For an hour they talked. Tyler told them about the years of running, about Victor's men, about the bridge in Reno and Sister Patricia, about the slow, painful process of learning to see himself clearly. He apologized to David specifically for what his actions had put Melissa through, for the trust issues, the nightmares, the way she'd had to rebuild her entire understanding of relationships because of his betrayal. David listened carefully, the way he listened to the men and women in his program, looking for sincerity, looking for the tells that separated genuine change from performance. When Tyler finished, David nodded slowly. I believe you've done real work on yourself. I can see it. Tyler's eyes widened slightly. You do? The way you talk about yourself, about what you did, it's different from people who are still running cons. There's accountability there, self-awareness. That's hard to fake. He leaned forward. But I also want you to understand something. If you ever do anything to hurt my wife or my family, I will not respond with legal documents and public speeches. I will respond in ways that make Victor Salazar look gentle. Tyler nodded slowly. I understand. Good. David stood. Then I think we're done here. Melissa stayed seated. Actually, I have one more question. Both men looked at her. What happens now, Tyler? You've apologized. You've made your amends. Where do you go from here? Tyler hesitated. I was thinking about staying in Houston for a while. My mother's getting older. I'd like to be closer to her. Something flickered in Melissa's chest. A warning. You're moving back? I'm considering it. The recovery center I went to has a chapter here. I could do outreach work, helping other people who struggle with the same patterns I did. David's expression shifted. That's actually similar to what I do. I know. I read about your organization. Second Chances Houston. Now you've helped hundreds of people rebuild their lives. We try. I was hoping maybe... Tyler stopped himself. No, never mind. That's too much to ask. What? I thought maybe I could volunteer with your organization to give back somehow, but that's inappropriate. You're Melissa's husband. I shouldn't... I'll think about it, David said. Melissa's head snapped toward him. David, I said I'll think about it, that's all. Tyler looked between them, reading the tension. I should go. I've taken enough of your time. Thank you for meeting with me, both of you. He stood, left money for the coffee, and walked out. The moment he was gone, Melissa turned to her husband. Please tell me you're not seriously considering that. I'm considering it. That's different from agreeing to it. David, this is exactly what a con artist would do. Embed himself in our lives, get close to us through work, find new angles. Or it's exactly what a changed man would do. Use his past to help others avoid the same mistakes. You can't know which one it is. Neither can you. David's voice was gentle but firm. That's the problem with transformation, Mel. You can never be completely certain it's real. At some point, you have to make a choice about whether to believe. And if you choose wrong, then we deal with the consequences. Together. Melissa stared at her husband, the man who believed in redemption so deeply that he'd built his life's work around it. You want to give him a chance. I want to give him an opportunity to prove he's changed. There's a difference. The difference might destroy us. No. David took her hand. Nothing Tyler Morrison does can destroy us. We're stronger than anything he could throw at us. Melissa wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe her husband's faith was well placed. But late that night, after David was asleep, she slipped out of bed and stood at the window, looking out at the dark street. Something was wrong. She couldn't name it, couldn't point to evidence. But her instincts, the instincts that had saved her once before, were screaming. She just didn't know what they were screaming about. Yet. Now, if this story is making your heart race, do me a favor. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been fooled before. It's someone who's trying to decide whether to trust again. Share it now, then come back. Because what Melissa discovers next changes everything. 3 weeks later, Tyler Morrison was volunteering at Second Chances Houston. It had started small. A few hours a week, answering phones, filing paperwork. David kept him away from direct client contact at first, testing his commitment. Tyler showed up early and stayed late. He was unfailingly polite, endlessly helpful, and never once complained about being given menial tasks. "He's actually good at this," David admitted one night. "He has a way with people. Even just answering phones, he makes callers feel heard." Melissa said nothing. "You still don't trust him?" "No." "It's been 3 weeks, Mel. No red flags, nothing suspicious, just a man showing up and doing the work." "Tyler was always good at showing up and doing the work. That's what made him dangerous. He commits to the role completely. What would it take? For you to believe he's changed?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll never believe it." David nodded slowly. "That's fair. You've earned that skepticism. But I'm asking you to try. Not for Tyler, for me, for Emma. I don't want our daughter growing up in a house where her mother can never believe anyone can change." The words hit Melissa harder than she expected. "That's not fair." "I know. But it's true." She looked away. Outside, the Houston skyline glittered against the night sky. Somewhere out there, Tyler was probably in his apartment, rehearsing his next move. Or maybe he was just sleeping, like a normal person, like someone who had actually changed. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll try. But I'm not letting my guard down. And if anything feels wrong, I'm pulling the plug. Deal." Over the next month, Tyler's role at Second Chances expanded. And David moved him into direct client work, and Tyler excelled. Former convicts, addicts, people who had hit bottom, they responded to him in ways they didn't respond to other volunteers. Maybe because they recognized something in him. Maybe because he'd been where they were. He shared his story in group sessions. The wedding scam, the exposure, the running, the recovery. People listened, riveted, and then shared their own stories of manipulation and consequence. He's actually helping people," David told Melissa. "Real, measurable impact. Clients who work with Tyler have better outcomes than those who don't." "Great," Melissa said flatly. "He's found a new angle." But even she had to admit, watching from a distance, that something seemed different about Tyler now. The charm was still there, but the predatory edge was gone. He didn't try to manipulate situations to his advantage. He didn't network. He didn't schmooze with donors or try to impress Richard Chambers. He just helped. It was disorienting. Then came the dinner invitation. David suggested it, a small dinner at their home. Tyler, Margaret Morrison, Richard and Victoria, Samantha. A chance for everyone to see how far Tyler had come, and perhaps to begin closing old wounds. "Absolutely not," Melissa said. "Just consider it. He is not coming to my home, he is not sitting at my table, and he is not being anywhere near my daughter. Emma won't even be there. She can stay with your parents." "No." "Mel?" I said no. But David kept asking. And Margaret Morrison called to ask. And even Richard grudgingly admitted that it might be time to put this thing to rest. "I still don't trust him," Richard said. "But I trust that we can handle him. All of us together watching him. If he's going to slip up, that's when it'll happen." Melissa hated that the logic made sense, and she agreed to the dinner. The evening arrived. Everything was elegant. The table, the food, the flowers. David and Melissa had hosted dozens of dinners like this, but nothing had ever felt so loaded with tension. Tyler arrived on time, dressed simply, carrying a bottle of wine that he offered with obvious nervousness. "I know this is uncomfortable," he said as Melissa took the bottle. "Thank you for allowing me to be here." "Don't thank me yet. And the night is young." Dinner was strained but civil. Small talk about weather and work. Margaret talked about her garden. Richard discussed a new construction project. Victoria asked about Tyler's work with Second Chances. "It's been healing," Tyler said carefully. "Being able to use the worst parts of my past to help others. I never thought I'd find purpose in my mistakes, but here we are." "Very poetic," Richard said, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "He almost sounds rehearsed." "Probably because it is. I practice what I'm going to say in most social situations now, part of my recovery process. I learned that improvising usually meant I was manipulating, so now I plan ahead." It was disarmingly honest. Richard had no response. After dinner, the group split. Margaret and Victoria went to see the garden. Richard cornered David to discuss a potential donation to Second Chances, which left Melissa alone with Tyler in the living room. You planned this," she said quietly. "What?" "Getting everyone else out of the room, leaving us alone. You're still running plays." Tyler shook his head. "I promise you I'm not. I can leave if you want. Go join the others." Melissa studied him, looking for the tells, the micro-expressions, the subtle signs of deception she'd learned to recognize. She found nothing. "Why does it bother you so much?" she asked finally. "That I don't trust you?" "It doesn't bother me. You shouldn't trust me. I haven't earned that yet." "Yet. You think you can earn it eventually." "I hope so, not because I need your approval, but because—" He stopped. "Because what?" "Because you were the first person who ever held me accountable. Really accountable. What you did at that wedding, it was devastating. It destroyed my life. But it was also the first completely honest thing that had ever happened to me." He met her eyes. "You showed me who I was. And that started the process of becoming someone different. So in a way, I owe you everything." Melissa didn't know what to say. "I should check on Emma," she said finally, which was absurd because Emma wasn't even home. She retreated to the kitchen, stood at the sink, tried to slow her racing heart. He was good, so good. The perfect words, delivered with perfect sincerity. But something was wrong. She could feel it. She just couldn't see it. Melissa found it 3 days later. And it was an accident, really. She'd been going through Tyler's volunteer file at Second Chances, looking for something, anything, to justify her suspicion. Instead, she found a list of clients Tyler had worked with over the past month. One name jumped out at her, Jason Hartley. She knew that name. Jason Hartley had been Tyler's college roommate for 1 semester before Ryan Torres. They'd had a falling out over money. Jason claimed Tyler stole $2,000 from him and never paid it back. Jason Hartley was now a client at Second Chances. Melissa pulled the intake file. Jason had been admitted 6 weeks ago. Former drug conviction, seeking employment assistance. His emergency contact was listed as Ryan Torres. The bottom dropped out of Melissa's stomach. She dug deeper, pulled phone records for the office, found calls between Tyler's extension and a number in Galveston, Ryan's parents' house. She pulled Tyler's volunteer hours, cross-referenced them with David's schedule. She found that Tyler consistently volunteered when David was out of the office, when Tyler had unsupervised access to files, computers, donor lists. She pulled financial records, found a small discrepancy, $500 missing from the petty cash fund. The withdrawal had happened during Tyler's shift. Small, deniable, but there. She sat back in David's desk chair, her hands shaking. It wasn't redemption, it was reconnaissance. Tyler wasn't reformed. He was embedded. He'd spent 3 months building trust, accessing systems, gathering information, and Jason and Ryan were part of it. But for what? What was the end game? She needed more evidence, something undeniable, something that would expose him without giving him room to spin a counter-narrative. She needed to catch him in the act. Melissa said nothing to David, not because she didn't trust him, but because David believed in Tyler's redemption. If she told him now, he would confront Tyler directly, and Tyler would disappear, regroup, come back with a new angle. No, she needed to end this permanently. She called Samantha. "I need your help." "What's wrong? You sound—" "Tyler's running a con. Still. I found evidence." Samantha was silent for a beat. "I knew it. I knew that bastard couldn't have changed. I need to prove it. I need to catch him. And I need to do it without David knowing." "What do you need me to do?" "I'm going to set a trap." The trap was simple. Melissa created a fake donor file. A wealthy widow named Patricia Bernstein, recently bereaved, looking to make a significant charitable contribution in her late husband's name. Net worth, $30 million. She planted the file in the Second Chances database and waited. 2 days later, Tyler accessed the file. 3 days after that, Patricia Bernstein received a call from an unknown number. The caller identified himself as a volunteer from Second Chances, following up on her interest in making a donation. Except it wasn't Tyler's voice. It was Ryan Torres. Melissa listened to the recording through the app she'd installed to monitor the fake number. Ryan was good, charming, professional, asking about Patricia's interests and philanthropic goals. He was also building a profile, gathering information, running the same playbook Tyler had run on her years ago. They were working together, Tyler inside, gathering intel, Ryan outside, working the marks. And Jason Hartley was probably the muscle, ready to enforce if anyone got cold feet about paying up. The new con wasn't about Melissa at all. It was about using Second Chances, David's organization, as a hunting ground for wealthy donors to exploit. Tyler had never been after redemption. He'd been after access. Melissa took everything she'd found to Daniel Whitmore's office. The attorney listened carefully, examining each piece of evidence. When Melissa finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You have them," he said finally. "Wire fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, theft from a non-profit organization. If you press charges, they're looking at federal time." "I want to do more than press charges." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" "I want Tyler to know I caught him. Again. I want him to know that everything he built these past 5 years, the redemption story, the relationship with his mother, and the illusion of transformation, was for nothing." "That's personal." "Yes, it is." Daniel studied her. "You've grown up a lot since that wedding, Melissa." "I've had to." "What about David? Does he know?" "Not yet. I'll tell him tonight, after I've decided exactly what we're going to do." "What are you thinking?" Melissa smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "I'm thinking Tyler wants one more chance to prove he's changed. So I'm going to give it to him. One final dinner. One final opportunity to come clean. And if he doesn't, then I play another recording, and this time the audience won't just be my wedding guests. It'll be a federal prosecutor." The final dinner happened on a Friday evening. Same house, same elegant table, same players. Margaret, Richard, Victoria, David, Samantha, and Tyler, who arrived looking relaxed and grateful, with no idea what was about to happen. The difference was the recording device in Melissa's pocket. And the federal agent parked 2 blocks away, listening to the live feed. Dinner proceeded normally. Small talk, laughter, the appearance of a family healing old wounds. Tyler was charming, self-deprecating, everything he'd been for the past 3 months. When dessert was served, Melissa stood up. "I'd like to say something." The table fell silent. "Tyler, these past few months have been illuminating. Watching you work at Second Chances, hearing about your recovery journey, seeing how much you've changed." She paused. "I almost believed it. I really did." Tyler's smile flickered. "Melissa? But then I found Jason Hartley in your client files, and Ryan Torres in your phone records, and $500 missing from petty cash." The color drained from Tyler's face. "I found the fake donor profiles you've been building, the calls Ryan's been making, the whole operation you've been running out of my husband's organization." Tyler's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Melissa, I can explain. Can you explain the call Ryan made to Patricia Bernstein 3 days ago? The fake widow I invented? The one you accessed in our database and then passed along to your partner?" She pulled out her phone, pressed play. Ryan's voice filled the dining room. "Mrs. Bernstein, I completely understand your concerns. Charitable giving is such a personal decision. Why don't we meet in person? I find these conversations are so much more meaningful face-to-face." The recording ended. Tyler was standing now, his chair knocked back, his careful facade crumbling in real time. "That's not... I didn't know Ryan was going to..." "Stop!" Melissa's voice was ice. "Just stop. I've heard enough of your lies to last a lifetime." She turned to David, whose face had gone through shock, confusion, and was now settling into something colder than Melissa had ever seen. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I needed to be sure." David nodded slowly. "I understand." "You set me up," Tyler said, his voice rising. "This whole dinner was a setup." "Yes, just like the first wedding, except this time the police are already listening." On cue, the doorbell rang. Richard went to answer it. 2 federal agents in suits stepped inside. "Tyler Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and theft. You have the right to remain silent." Tyler wasn't listening. He was staring at Melissa with something that looked almost like admiration. "You're better at this than I am," he said quietly. "You always were." "No." Melissa watched as they cuffed him. "I'm not playing a game, Tyler. I'm just refusing to be played." They let him out. The door closed, and the nightmare was finally, truly over. Tyler Morrison pleaded guilty to avoid a trial. He received 8 years in federal prison. Ryan Torres received 6. Jason Hartley received 4. The story made local news. Reformed con artist caught running new scam through nonprofit organization. People who remembered the wedding coverage 5 years earlier shook their heads and said they'd known he couldn't have changed. Margaret Morrison visited her son in prison once. She told him she loved him, but could never trust him again. "Some people are just broken," she said. "I've accepted that about you." Tyler had no response. See second chances. Houston survived the scandal. If anything, the publicity brought more donors, people who were moved by David's commitment to redemption and Melissa's commitment to protecting it from exploitation. "We can't stop believing in people," David said at the press conference afterward. "But we can be smarter about how we verify that belief." Melissa stood beside him, holding his hand. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. 6 months later, Melissa stood on the balcony of their home, watching Emma play in the backyard with David. Her phone buzzed. A text from Samantha. "Drinks tonight? We need to celebrate you being a genius." Melissa smiled. "Can't tonight. Family time. Tomorrow?" "Deal. You're buying. You're the one who outsmarted a con artist twice." Melissa set the phone down. The truth was, she didn't feel like a genius. She felt tired, relieved, and strangely sad. Part of her had wanted Tyler to be real, wanted the redemption story to be true. Wanted to believe that people could change, that her instincts could be wrong, that the world was more forgiving than she'd learned to expect. But the bigger part of her, the part that had been burned once and refused to be burned again, knew better. Some people don't change. They just get better at pretending. And the only defense against that is to never stop watching. Never stop questioning. Never stop trusting your own instincts. Even when everyone around you is telling you to give someone another chance. She'd trusted her instincts twice now. Twice they'd saved her. "Mommy!" Emma was waving from the yard, her smile bright, her eyes full of trust. Melissa waved back. That trust, her daughter's perfect, innocent faith in a world that hadn't hurt her yet, was worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth being suspicious and careful and sometimes even cold to preserve. So Tyler Morrison had tried twice to infiltrate her life. Twice she'd destroyed him. There would not be a third time. "Coming, sweetie." She walked down to join her family. The sun was setting over Houston, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. And Melissa Chambers' chin had never felt stronger. Melissa caught Tyler once at her wedding. She caught him again 5 years later. Twice he thought he could outsmart her. Twice he learned the same lesson. And some women don't just survive betrayal. They become so strong that no one can ever deceive them again. If you believe that trusting your instincts can save your life, if you believe that the con artists of the world will always get caught eventually, then subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Because in these stories, the liars always fall, and the women who see through them, they always rise. See you in the next tale.